And where this interests me, Sage, and I just wrote about it and published it at scorenorth.com, free website if you want to read it, about how it could impact Anthony Barr. I went through Dom Capers' history, and it's all sorts of guys who look like Anthony Barr that were really good at rushing the passer off of the edge as that outside linebacker. Even Julius Peppers, late in his career, becomes a situational pass rusher and ends up with 25 sacks in 3 years with Dom Capers as his defensive coordinator. And the fact that this team has 3 good linebackers, with Eric Wilson probably needing to play more and some
I
uncertainty on the
agree, by the
defensive line.
way. I
What, on
agree.
Eric
Eric
Wilson?
Wilson,
Yeah, he's a good player.
yeah. I mean, it's, obviously in the NFL, you have 3 linebackers, but I don't know what the exact numbers are, but that third linebacker probably plays a third of the time,
Yeah,
maybe.
probably less. Yep.
I thought Eric Wilson, when he's had to go in there, whether he's part of that 3 linebacker group or maybe there's an injury and he goes in there for some plays or whatever it might be, he has consistently been a very good player and a guy that you wish was on the field more. And I guess I know where you're going with this. You're saying, get Eric Wilson on the field more, maybe have Anthony Barr maybe as almost a fourth rush guy and have him sort of bounce around and play multiple positions, yet he could still drop in coverage and be one of those sort of outside linebacker types that sometimes rushes and sometimes doesn't. Much easier to do, obviously, in a 3-man front, not a 4-man front. So I think any way to change it up, 3-man fronts, I think confuse quarterbacks a little bit more. There's there's an extra variable there of who can drop into coverage and zone pressures, and when teams blitz and then they play sort of zone behind it, and it's just a little bit more confusing. Sometimes you can get a linebacker matched up and a running back has to block him, which is good to have, really a 3-man rush with the fourth guy being the linebacker, but now the running back is out of the pass pattern, which sort of adds an extra guy to cover everybody else. And so there are some definite advantages to having a 3-man rush on third down. And something the Vikings don't do very often.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that. For third downs, Anthony Barr usually rushes on third down and has had a good amount of success. I went through year by year in terms of his pressure rates, and he's usually in the top 10 in terms of total pressures from guys who play his position, but he's more of that all-around linebacker now. I wonder if Dom Capers would just take one look at Anthony Barr and say, wait, he's not going off the edge all the time? I mean, which I understand because they've had Hunter and Griffin, but if you lose Everson Griffin, you've got to have more answers there, I think. Then you're talking.
Or why not have,
right?
Everson Griffin on the inside? Why not
he's
have
even
him
still on the team?
Yeah, or not, have a guy like him at defensive end, lined up over a guard. I mean, that's one thing that San Francisco was doing, some other teams were doing, is putting those defensive ends. The Vikings were doing some of putting the defensive ends on the inside, so they could get more one-on-ones with the guards, and then maybe have a little bit less a pass rusher on maybe there's a team that's a premier tackle, and that guy's gonna be hard to beat. And so I like that. Anthony he's such a good athlete. And he's almost like a tweener. I mean, he's a good linebacker, but he could also be sort of a defensive end type. I mean, he played running back at UCLA for, I think, 2 seasons maybe before they moved him to linebacker. So he's a tremendous athlete, and he has had a lot of success when he rushes the quarterback.
Yeah, and I feel like as an overall linebacker, like an all-around guy, Eric Kendricks is better at doing everything than Anthony Barr is, especially in the coverage element. And just going through some of the PFF numbers, he's always been a little below average in coverage and good against the run most of the time and great when rushing the passer, especially when you look at the pressure rates. He's creating pressure somewhere between 15 and 20% of his pass rushes, which is a very, very good rate. And a lot of it is boosted by, blitzes and stuff like that are the only times he's going to be used to rush the passer. But with his athletic profile, how fast he is, the length that he has, I don't know if I would want him going up against tackles all the time, but I definitely would want them to use him in creative fashion or rushing up over guards and things like that. I'd like to see more of it, especially if they lose Everson Griffin. And then you're talking about maybe a Fadi Adenabo, who they liked at defensive tackle, then they decided was a defensive end. So he's kind of a tweener type of guy too. He's
definitely a tweener.
Yeah, they've got some pieces that I think they could put in position to succeed if Griffin leaves. And I think that starts with Anthony Barr. So I kind of connected the two dots between he and Dom Capers.
Well, and I don't think, they're not going to change this defense to a true 3-4 defense on like first and second down.
Mm-hmm.
But teams, play so much nickel now, and because teams play so much three wide receivers, or even sometimes teams will play some sort of like nickel to a two tight end look, just because sometimes that second tight end is more of a pass catcher, and teams are willing to go light in that scenario. So, having the ability to have more linebackers in the field and maybe take out a defensive lineman, defensive tackle, just adds more athleticism to a defense. And so I think having a package of three down looks, and also, for young quarterbacks, it's a different count. It's different with protection. Some of
Mm-hmm.
the rules change. And so I think having more variables, a little more confusion could help out make this defense better.
All right.